The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Alan Blumkin. I'm here with my co-host David Nemec, and we're going to do another session of the all-time teams by decade. Today we're going to discuss the decade from 1911 through 1920. Contrary to popular belief, neither David or I were at any of the games in those years. Welcome, David.
Welcome to you, Al. Glad to be with you again.
Okay, we're doing the second half of the dead ball era, and it's an era where the American League was totally superior to the National League. The American League, the only two World Series they lost in that decade was in 1914, where the A's lost to the Boston Braves, and in 1919 when the White Sox supposedly threw the series to the Cincinnati Reds. But on the whole, it was an American League decade.
It was. It's remarkable how really the American League was, vastly superior to the National League. They didn't play interleague games then, of course, except occasional exhibition games. But had they, it would have been interesting to see what the results would have been because the dominance was clearly there.
Okay, what position do you want to start with? The catcher, like we
can start, with catcher, and that's there are a lot of no standout choices, but there are a lot of guys to consider.
Bill Bergen.
Bill played.
Yeah,
a good defensive catcher, and that's what counted. And it was very important to have a guy behind the plate who could play at least half the games and be able to throw runners out, stealing, and not allow pass balls. He didn't have to hit much. He didn't have to be a great base runner.
He didn't hit much.
No, and they didn't hit. Really, the catchers as a group really did not hit much.
So who's the best one of that era? Ray Schalk?
Ray Schalk made the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I know that, yeah.
In his time, I don't think he was ever the best catcher in the majors. The guy who turned out to have the most productive career started in I think about 1913-12, Wally Shang. And Shang struggled as on defense, which is why he did not get full playing time. The teams that had him had to find another position for him to play. He was with the A's, and he played a lot of outfield, occasionally in the infield. As a catcher, he was poor defensively. Nevertheless, I think in the overall picture, he was probably the best catcher to come out of that decade. But there were certainly a lot of other candidates who were good too. Steve O'Neill was a good catcher. Even though he doesn't get any credit, the guy with Detroit, I'm trying to think of his name, also a good defensive catcher. And George Gibson played into the teens. He was a good defensive catcher.
What about Gabby Street?
Gabby Street was not bad. Never played a lot of games. I think maybe did he have a season with 100 or more games? I don't know. He
was famous for being, the catcher for Walter Johnson.
Yeah, he did catch Walter Johnson, and he also was the first authenticated catcher to catch a ball dropped from
Washington Monument.
Yeah. Back in 1893, Pop Schreiber, a catcher, tried to catch a ball dropped from the Washington or Lincoln Monument, and he failed to do it. Although he held on to it briefly, eventually it bounced out of his glove. But Street did catch it, and that's his claim to fame. Street turned out to be a very good ball player and a good manager. Led the Cardinals to the pennant, but I don't think we can call him our all-star catcher. So it's pretty much you can make cases for a number of players. Bill Kerrigan was a player manager with Boston,
Yeah, he led them to straight World Series.
Yeah, he did.
He quit after 1918. 1916, he quit.
He was only, he really was only a bit player for the last few years of his career, and never really. I don't think he ever really was an impact catcher. He was a good, decent defensive catcher, but it was his managerial leadership that shot him into some prominence. I don't know, who would you go with?
Oh God, I don't know. I think the catcher you're looking for in Detroit, I just wanted to reference
Oscar
Stanage.
Yeah.
Oscar Stanage.
I think that's the way it's pronounced, Stanage.
Yeah, didn't he? He was a pretty bad hitter too.
Bad hitter.
Yeah, because I remember him being on my list of on batting champions.
Yeah, he was. He had some very poor years. And Steve O'Neill, long-term catcher, and a good manager later on.
I guess Shang, would have to be it because it's really a Hobson's choice.
I would pick Shang overall, but it's Shock was good, and Hank Gowdy was a good catcher too from that era. But most of the guys were people like Otto Miller and Hank DeBerry and
what about Killefer?
Killefer, and an underrated guy was Bill Raridan. Raridan was a very good defensive catcher, and had a couple of years where he did hit in the 270s, which was a fine average for a catcher in that decade. So those are I think the top candidates. And
no, you pick one because
I would pick Shang, but it's certainly.
Well, he wound up on the Yankees, I think.
He did. He wanted to be.
Went from Philadelphia to the Red Sox to the Yankees.
Yeah.
That was
through.
That was a trail that a number of players did. From Mac to the Red Sox to the Yankees.
Yeah. And then he went to he had years with the Browns too, and he had good years in the 20s. I think he ended up catching the most games under Miller Huggins of anybody in the Yankees.
First base would be Stuffy McGinnis.
Well, McGinnis is good, but Sisler came on.
Sisler was, I was going to say, for next time.
Yeah,
20s.
Sisler, but McGinnis played the entire decade.
Yeah.
And was always a serviceable is a pretty good fielder, never much of a hitter, very little power, nevertheless batted near the top of the lineup because he could bunt, pretty good base runner. Mac liked him a lot. But McGinnis bounced around until he put in, I think he got over 2,000 hits and played into the mid-20s.
Well, he was on the Pirates in 1925.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
He was. I think he's probably the last guy from the Mac pennant winners in the early part of the century to be on a pennant winning team elsewhere.
Well, one of the ones who probably will not get very much consideration was Chick Gandil.
No, Gandil was a very good defensive catcher, but actually
first baseman. Hal Chase is another one, but was a crooked.
Well, Chase would get my vote as the overall for the.
Even though he was a crook.
He was a crook, but it's never been established how much of a crook he was. And he was. Most people reading about the Black Sox scandal can't believe that he wasn't really implicated in it. It's because it seems like exactly his cup of tea.
Yeah.
But there's never any evidence that he was. But a couple other players on the Giants with him, Lee McGee and Heine Zimmerman, he banned from baseball.
McGee was the one that they started the whole investigation into the Black Sox scandal with, because he had some bet that he was playing for the Phillies. I think the Phillies or the Cubs, and he had to score a winning run to cost big gamblers the bet because he was scoring ahead of a home run.
Yeah.
and that basically opened the investigation into the White Sox.
Yeah.
That's why I read. I don't know how true that is, but
there were a lot of avenues into it because they did not do a good job of hiding it. But yeah, I just looked up Gabby Street. He actually had 2 seasons in a row where he caught over 100 games. That's pretty good. But they weren't in the teens. They were prior to 1911.
Oh, yeah.
He was Johnson's early catcher. Johnson went through a number of catchers. I know that Walt Williams once did a complete workup of all the catchers who worked with great pitchers. And
Walt did that. I remember him talking about to me a bunch of times.
Yeah, he did.
I miss him.
Yeah, he really took on some interesting projects. That was one of them. But that's, I think first base probably belongs to Chase. Toward the end of the second half of the decade belongs to Sisler.
Was Daubert the first baseman or an outfielder?
Daubert was in there too. A very good first baseman. 2 batting championships. Vic Sayer hit with power and walked.
I know that name. He was the Cubs.
He got hurt. Never to see. I think he either broke a leg or badly injured a leg sliding. He was never the same player again. But for 3 or 4 years, he was a very good first baseman. There were some other guys too. I'm trying to think. Dick Hollis was nothing special. Wally Pipp toward the second half of the decade. Wally Pipp was a good first baseman. Turns out he played into the mid-20s, ended up with the Reds, about 26 or 7, I believe.
Met the guy in the Red Sox, was Halbersel or Janford?
Halbersel, yeah.
Yeah.
Halbersel I think he came from the Reds. And had a couple of decent seasons. Wasn't a great first baseman. George Burns had a couple very good years, but overall, not among the top, the elite. I have to go with Chase.
In the American League.
There was a Burns in the American League.
There are 2 of them, I know.
The National. They played at the same time. They both compiled over 2,000 hits, and they were very hard.
In the early editions of the Spoilers, the daguerreotypes, they were both in there.
Yeah. It even made it more confusing. I think we covered the first baseman pretty well.
Yeah. So who would we go with?
Second base.
Who would we go with overall?
Overall, I would go with Chase.
Okay.
But Sisler.
Yeah, that's. We'll publish that. That would be open to a very big controversy. Yeah.
It would because there would be votes for Daubert too, and even McGinnis.
Second base has to be Eddie Collins.
Yeah, Eddie Collins. Definitely Eddie Collins. And the Red Sox, even though they won a lot of pennants in the teens, never really had a top-notch second baseman. They were doing it with guys like Hal Janvrin, who was just an adequate ball player.
Yeah. And the Giants had, I think, Larry Doyle at that point.
Larry Doyle, would definitely, I would think definitely should probably be the National League choice. Doyle had some very good years with the Giants. They ended up trading him to the Cubs. And he still had a couple of years left when he went to the Cubs. So overall, he was a very good second baseman in that decade too. Hornsby, of course, came up toward.
Yeah, Hornsby's next one.
In 15.
Yeah.
And in 16, he was starting to play regularly, but it was at third base.
Yeah.
And
he
became a regular shortstop.
He started to come of age. Yeah.
Yeah, he came of age as second baseman, started coming at the very end of the teens. And second base proved to be his primary position.
Well, Elijah Lee was on the way down in the teens.
Yeah, he still had a couple
after
years
1910, 1911, he was on the way down.
Yeah, he was, but he played through 16.
Yeah. He was on the A's in 16. He was on that horrible 36
horrible
and
age.
17 teams.
Yeah, Lajoie had a pretty unfortunate career. He had one chance at a pennant, and that was in 1908.
Yeah.
And, we've talked about that, how that went awry for Cleveland. But I think Collins, gets the nod for the top choice at the position.
Yeah, and shortstop is almost Wagner carryover big enough.
He lasts long enough, I think, to hold the All-Star slot. But Rabbit Moranville
He couldn't hit.
came up in 1912, was a no-hit, good field guy, and it's difficult to assess how good a fielder he was because he made a lot of errors. I don't think he ever led the league in fielding percentage. He made errors because he reached a lot more balls than most shortstop did.
Yeah.
And some of his tougher chances.
Yeah, when you talk about people that don't belong in the Hall of Fame, he's generally very high on the list.
He is, but there's one thing that Moranville did that nobody else ever did. He finished among the top in voting in the Chalmers Award, the League MVP awards, and finally the BBVA awards. He finished high in all three of those award departments.
Well, the ones I had in the 20s, if you won it once, you couldn't win it again.
Yeah.
Which was ridiculous.
No, he had a good year in the 30s too.
Yeah.
I think 30 or 31. He had enough of a good season. I think he was at second base with the Braves. He did get Hall of Fame votes. Not Hall of Fame, but also.
What about Jack Barry?
Jack Barry that was part of the $100,000 infield with McGinnis, Collins, and home run Baker.
Yeah.
Barry played throughout mostly the teams.
Yeah, he became the baseball coach of the Holy Cross for many years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Barry was a good shortstop. Terry Turner with Cleveland was a good shortstop. But none of them were in Wagner's class when Wagner still had good years left in him.
No, we'll go with him.
I think he'd be our best selection.
Third base is Baker. Even though he sat out that 1 year, 1915.
Yeah, he did. He sat out 1 year. Heine Zimmerman was also a pretty good third baseman. And
he won a
Grove
Triple Crown 1 year. He left.
Well, no, he actually didn't. They took the RBI crown away from him after reconfiguring all the 1912 stats. It turns out that Wagner had 103 RBI and he had, I think, only 98 or 99. Originally, he was credited with 100. No, he was credited with 103, and Wagner had 102. And Wagner's 102 stood up, and his total dropped. Herm Kravenoff has been doing a lot of research.
I know, yeah.
Early RBI
that stuff, yeah.
I'm not sure he's the one who uncovered that, but so Zimmerman did drop off the Triple Crown list, and so did Hugh Duffy eventually too, because they found out when protested games were counted in the stats that
another one
tie games.
Third baseman was pretty good, but was also caught up in the Black Sox scandal, was Buck Weaver.
Buck Weaver, toward the end of the decade, he may have been the best third baseman.
Yeah, he also, to his death, he maintained his innocence. Every time he would write, the commissioners for to revisit his case, they refused all the time.
Yeah, man, they did. They never really looked. Ted Williams and Bob Feller tried to get the Hall to take a look again at Joe Jackson, and they refused. And, nobody's ever going to have much luck with the Black Sox.
I know, yeah. Weaver hit in 1920 with the lively ball. He had 333 in his last season.
Yeah.
Before he was banned.
He was a switch hitter.
Yeah.
Pretty good fielder, good base runner. There were other good third basemen too. Red Smith had some good years with the Braves, and then Never really made the top echelon, but that's right. I think there were others. Larry Gardner was a very good third baseman.
Yeah, I'm Boston.
With the Red Sox.
Yeah.
And he came over to Cleveland in time to be on the pennant-winning team in Cleveland in 1920.
Yeah, with Smokey Joe Wood.
Yeah. But I think we can safely say that overall, given his entire career, which began before 1911 and ended after 1920, but embraced all the teen years except for the 1 year he sat out.
Yeah.
The Baker probably is our best candidate for third base.
Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah.
And, because I think he probably didn't want to, after Mac got rid of everybody, probably didn't want to play in an environment like that.
No, he didn't. He didn't. Yeah, Mac didn't want to pay him.
Mac didn't want to pay anybody, really.
Yeah, but he did do Collins a favor, trading him.
Well, he did Collins because that was part of the Federal League war.
Yeah.
And then when Collins went over with the big contract, and the rest of them were getting paid, very little by Comiskey, there's a lot of hostility towards him and from White Sox players.
Yeah, there was.
Plus, he was college. That was another thing that
he was a college
they
boy,
held against him.
And, yeah.
Now the outfield would, you have basically Cobb, Speaker, and Joe Jackson. There may be others that.
Well, and they're all. Notice that they're all in the American League.
Yeah, exactly.
You can almost have to have a separate National League because those three stood above everybody in the National League, and they stood above.
They always had Sherry McGee, and they had Kravath, who
was Gabby Kravath,
hitting the home runs and break a ball.
Yeah, and McGee was a really good ball player and finished.
Well, he got shafted because they traded him right before they won in 1950.
He traded with the Braves. He was traded by the Phillies to the Braves. Prior to the 1915 season, and the Braves had won in 14, but didn't do it in 15, and the Phillies did. He missed a chance to be in a World Series. He did get to be in a World Series winner, the 1919 Reds, but by that time
he was done.
He was done. He's 34. I've been reading on him. I think he had epilepsy, and epilepsy probably is what saved him in 1911. Was the last time, I think, in Major League history that a player punched out an umpire. On the field of play. Yeah, there were fights under the stands after games between Cobb and Billy Evans, and people like that. But McGee, actually punched out rookie umpire Bill Finneran, who rung him up on strikes on a ball that was very, very questionable. And McGee just tossed his bat up in the air in disgust. And when the bat hit the ground, Finneran said, "You're out of here." So McGee stalked back to the plate and unloaded, decked him. And Finneran ended up in the hospital, and McGee ended up suspended for the season. But he got back. The league president, Tom Lynch, restored him after missing only about 30-some games or 20-some games. And supposedly the reason was because he had epilepsy, and the Phillies contended he was in the midst of an epileptic fit when he did what he did to Finneran, but I kind of doubt it. But nevertheless, I'm sure Lynch was willing to listen to it because Finneran did not have a good reputation. He was not liked by players, not liked by fellow umpires either. Only lasted 2 seasons in the National League. But Finneran or McGee and Kravath from the Phillies, and you have Wheat from Brooklyn, and Roush from
Cincinnati. Roush started in the Federal League. I think he's the only one that started in the Federal League that's in the Hall of Fame.
I think you might be right.
I remember reading that somewhere a long time ago.
Yeah, he did.
And he later on he missed, I think, 1 full season and part of another season, most of another season for holding out.
Yeah, he did. He did. And Wheat had some good seasons in the teens.
Yeah.
but he also had some bad seasons. He didn't really establish himself until the 20s, and he had 5 or 6 really good years with Brooklyn. But everybody had good years in the 20s. I don't really think Wheat was a Hall of Fame, really a strong Hall of Fame candidate at all. Even though he did win batting title.
No, there's worse than that. There's like Chick Hafey and
yeah.
I mean,
there were worse.
Yeah.
There were many worse choices from those years. But Roush was a solid player. The Giants had George Burns, our other George Burns.
Yeah.
Was a solid player.
I know Crawford played a few years. Sam Crawford.
Crawford played.
He had 4 or 5 years in the Coast League when he was got 40 years old. He was still hitting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he finished up in 17. He played a few games in 17.
Yeah, retired with 29, 64 hits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he always said if he'd known that 3,000 hits would be a magic number, he would have hung around.
Yeah, Sam Rice said that also. When,
yeah, and they both came very close.
Yeah.
And they well could have made it, But yeah, Crawford, Crawford might have even been good enough to be a second team outfielder in the American League. He still had some good years in the early teens left, and there were quite a few good ball players that got smothered by Cobb and Speaker because they were really great ball players. And Jackson had a couple of off years, but when he really came to play, he
missed most of 1918. Being in service.
Yeah, he was.
I don't think he was actually in service, but he was went to his farm in South Carolina.
Yeah, he was working for a manufacturer.
Yeah.
And a couple guys missed. A lot of guys missed significant time, and some guys missed a season and a half or almost 2 seasons. But those and there were some other good outfielders too. I think we're overlooking. Trying to think who.
Harry Hooper.
Harry Hooper was a fine fielder. Yeah, you're right. Good one because he wasn't much of a hitter.
Yeah, I know. The Giants must have.
But he did hit over 300 when the 20s arrived.
Yeah.
And they had an outfield. The Red Sox had an outfield of Duffy, Lewis, Hooper, and Speaker, which was considered one of the greatest outfields ever, but really doesn't stand up to close inspection because Hooper had a long career. Lewis was a decent player, and Speaker was a great player. And anybody who hung around and played beside Speaker was going to get, if he hung around long enough, was going to get attention too.
Another Black Sox player that might have, he only played 5 or 6 years, but if he, played a full length, might have been considered very highly was Happy Felch.
Happy Felch, very good toward the end of the, if he lasted, I think he would, he was a fine center fielder and very underrated. People don't realize how much ground he covers in center field. He was, and there were other. Let's see if I can think. Well, Brago Roth was pretty good when he won the home run crown.
He got traded for Shoeless Joe Jackson.
He came.
I think Comiskey may have engineered that trade to help. Not Comiskey, Van Johnson. Because there's no reason that that Cleveland would have made that trade unless they were pressured.
Well, Jackson wasn't happy losing.
And Cleveland?
They were, Cleveland finished last in 1914. I think that was, and then. Yeah,
I know he jumped he came up to the A's and he jumped them because he couldn't handle a big city.
Yeah.
There's a woman I did a podcast with 2 weeks ago named Renee James. She's from that area, and she's created a thing called Shoeless Joe Productions, and she's going to prepare trying to prepare a movie that shows him in a lot better light than has been accustomed to. Yeah. And I asked her about his refusal to accept offers from both Connie Mack and Somerville on the Indians to get literate, and she said that he was very, very he couldn't handle that. Was very, very ashamed of it and being literate, and he couldn't.
Yeah, he was. He was not. He was kind of a loner. Didn't really mix well with teammates. Didn't, kind of was a little bit aloof to the fans because he didn't really know how to handle them.
Yeah.
And after the scandal, he pretty much just stayed away, distanced himself from everybody he'd been connected with.
Yeah.
He was a major league player.
They say he played semi-pro ball under assumed names.
Yeah.
In fact, that's the way the Aikman Out movie ends, is Buck Weaver sitting in a stand somewhere watching Shoeless Joe, play semi-pro ball for somebody, and he's killing it. The Shoeless Joe is not going to blow all over the place, and he said that, and Buck Weaver says to some guy sitting there, says, no, I played with him, that's not him,
Yeah.
But of course, he's become a totally mythological figure since all of that.
I know.
There's a number of biographies on him, which I have.
Yeah, I have. I've read a couple too. I think there's still a definitive biography remains to be written.
No, she's trying to create this movie that's supposed to be the definitive thing on him.
That's going to be tough because he.
Yeah, I know. She's from there, so certain people talk to her more than they were willing to talk to her than they are to, say somebody comes from this area.
Steven Spielberg
Yeah.
Well, there's a chance, but he was, except for his baseball exploits, he's really a relatively colorless figure.
Yeah.
Whereas somebody like Cobb, you can make 20 movies about him.
I know, yeah.
Not going to capture.
I said the one they came out with that one a number of years ago with Tommy Lee Jones. Basically, I said that if they ever made two movies out of Babe Ruth and Ty Cobb, they would be X-rated for different reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all.
Cobb is a very complex guy.
I know that. Yeah.
Yeah, there were some of the, a lot of players hated him, a lot of his teammates, but some swore by him.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I've read a number of biographies that when he came up to the Tigers, they shunned him because he was from Georgia. Civil War wasn't over that long. It was over like 40 years when he came up. Yeah, and they started, whistling "Marching Through Georgia" and all that. To even drive him, he was crazy from the day his mother shot his father.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of weird and unexplained stuff about Cobb that still needs probably never come. The truth is never going to come forward.
No, obviously not.
Yeah, because he got a bad rap in some ways, and escaped getting even more of a bad rap in other ways. But,
well, there's a particular player, Marty McManus, who was an outfielder there, and I think whose job Cobb eventually took, who was hated. He was the ringleader in the Cobb hating parade.
McIntyre and Jimmy Barrett were.
Yeah, but then again, when 1912, when he was suspended for punching that fan in the stands in New York, they went on strike for that one game. Yeah, and they brought out a bunch of guys from the Philly Sandlots. They lost 24-2. There was a pitcher named Al Travers, who I think became a priest, gave up all the runs.
Yeah.
And the
Deacon McGuire caught.
Yeah. and they dropped the. I remember reading about that in one of the Putnams when I was a kid, probably the Putnam on the Tigers. That they did. That's where I got most of my early knowledge from, was the Putnam team histories. I don't know if you ever read those.
I did.
Yeah, they came out every two a year. I have them all in paperback now.
Do you?
Yeah, because they printed them in paperback, over a several year period, like $12 a copy, and so it was better than spending $100 a piece for the real stuff.
Yeah. I had the real stuff.
Yeah, I have a few of the reels, but the ones that are very expensive I don't have.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's where I learned, most of my. When I started getting into the history of it, that's I would go to the library and take those books out. They had them all eventually.
Yeah, some of them.
Most of them stopped in the 40s or the early 50s.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so that's how I know about the strike game for Cobb, and then it lasted one day, and they agreed to if Van Johnson lifted the suspension, that they would come back and play. So that's what happened.
Yeah. Well, the teams were a tumultuous time. The federal. We haven't talked at all about the Federal League.
No.
Except to touch on it when you mentioned that Roush played.
Well, yeah, I know. Yeah.
Before he came to the National League, and the Federal League was a serious challenge to the major leagues. They'd been a minor league in 1913, and they went major in 1914, and they installed teams in several major league cities and installed teams in several minor league cities, which bordered on being major league.
Yeah, the Chicago team, Chicago Fed team was the one that built Wrigley Field.
Yeah, yeah, and the Baltimore Park also lasted for a long time.
Yeah, well, they almost wrecked the Baltimore Federal League team. Almost wrecked the International League team.
Yeah,
and that's why Jack Dunn, who was running the International League team, sold Babe Ruth, a number of other players just to meet expenses.
Yeah, I know, and Cleveland installed a team in the American Association
to block it.
The Federal League keep the Federal League from moving into Cleveland, because there would have been competition among three teams. As it was, there was competition between the Cleveland Indians, who were not that good a major league team, and their I don't know if the association team was a farm club as such, but they did swap players back and forth. Very few teams had any real working agreements with minor league teams, but they did have favorites who they were.
I know the settlement they had, after the 2 years, they allowed Wiegum, who owned the Chi-Feds, Charles Wiegum, who built what became Wrigley Field, to buy the Cubs, and they allowed Phil Ball, who owned the St. Louis Federal League team, to buy the Browns. And Phil Ball didn't get along with Branch Rickey, and he fired Branch Rickey, and Branch Rickey went to the Cardinals and developed them into a powerhouse. And I think the one thing they couldn't settle was the Baltimore team, and they were the ones who brought the Federal League, brought the suit against the antitrust suit against Major League Baseball, which led to the 1922 decision declaring baseball a sport and not a business, and exempted the baseball from Major League Baseball from the antitrust rules, which later on, of course, would lead to a lot of problems.
Yeah. No, but
I got into that stuff pretty heavily a number of years ago.
Well, we can continue to discuss it when we talk about the pitchers here.
Yeah. Well, the pitch.
Walter Johnson was.
Yeah, Walter Johnson was given money, and then of course they try to cut all of the salaries back after the Federal League folded up. But I think the two pitchers have to be Walter Johnson from the American League and Grover Alexander from the National League, because
Yeah.
I'm still amazed, and I urge on Facebook people to, anytime I see a post of Alexander, because I think he was better than Mathewson. You look at Alexander's first 7 years with the Phillies and Baker Ball, and every time I look at that, I say, how,
Yeah.
in that place, how the hell could this guy pitch like that in a place like that for 7 years?
Yeah, I could. A case can be made for him being even better than Johnson, because they both played for. Johnson played for some miserable teams early on. But anytime the teams got better in the teens, but he still couldn't put them over, bring them over the hump to win a pennant. And by the time they did win in 24-25, he was on the downslope.
Well, they sold Alexander. The Phillies sold Alexander and Killer for the Cubs prior to 1918, or when they announced because of the war.
Yeah.
And then Alexander was over in Europe, and he became partially deaf, and he developed epilepsy, which really affected him when he came back for the rest of his career, even though he was pretty effective after he came back, but not on the level he was before he went over there.
No, he never, he didn't. The war did him a lot of harm. I think it really accelerated his drinking problem. And
there was
but
one year he had
still a very good pitcher in the 20s.
Was it 1 year he had 16 shutouts in Baker Ball, and
that was
just unbelievable numbers in a place which was it was paradise.
It was,
especially if you were left-handed.
Yeah, well, Cravath did all his home runs in to right field over the. Right field had a fairly high barrier, but it was very close to the plate. And anybody who played right field in Philadelphia, had to know how to handle that barrier, because balls would come off the wall, and they would, if they were hit hard enough, and you played them on the bounce correctly, you had a chance to nail guys at first on what would.
There's a story. I don't know how. Yeah. I'm sure you heard the Boom Boom Beck story. He was pitching for the Dodgers, and he was getting blasted, and they took him out of the game, and he threw a ball off the wall. And Hack Wilson was in the outfield with a hangover. He was half asleep and woke up. He fielded the ball and threw a strike into second base.
Yeah. Some of these stories sound as if they have to be apocryphal. They can't be. But they aren't. Some of them are true, and it's always fun to try and pin down exactly when it happened, the exact game, because in a couple of occasions I've succeeded with stories.
Yeah, somebody put up a story that when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon in 1969, they found an object that looked like a baseball. So he told Lefty Gomez, that's a home run of Jimmy Fox hit off me in 1937. But other pitchers that I guess you can consider, a certain left-handed pitcher on the Red Sox was pretty good until they converted him.
Well, Babe Ruth, he was fantastic. If he'd stayed a pitcher, he and never hit a single home run in his career, he'd probably be in the Hall of Fame.
And another one probably would have made the Hall of Fame if it wasn't for the Black Sox was Eddie Seacott.
Yeah, Seacott was good.
Yeah.
And Joe Wood probably would have made the Hall of Fame.
If he didn't get hurt,
If his arm hadn't given out. He did come back as an outfielder. And
I know. He taught himself out of
very good years before.
I think he quit after 20 or 21.
Yeah, he did.
And what about Red Faber? I mean, they had some pretty good pitchers on that team.
Yeah, Faber. I've always been. I think Faber endured.
Yeah.
But Faber, I don't think was ever among the top pitchers in the game.
Yeah, Plank and Bender both were very good in the early part, and then I think they both wound up in the Federal League.
They did. Yeah. Jack Coombs wound up in the Federal League.
Yeah.
Too. So the A's were riddled. They were decimated by the federal.
That's because Mac wouldn't pay anybody.
Yeah, it wouldn't pay. He wouldn't
Yeah.
pay. He accused the team of throwing the
Throwing the series in 1914, yeah.
Yeah. How could this Boston team sweep 4 games from us? Well, because Philly, among the reasons was the A's were complacent. They'd won every time they played in a series. Since 1905, it was their only series.
And they had certain pitchers that were very good for a very short time, and they got hurt. The Red Sox had a guy named Hugh Bedient.
Yeah.
And the Indians had a guy I discovered later on, Greg, who had 3 20-game seasons, and then
straight 20-game seasons.
Yeah, and then he got hurt, and I think he went a lengthy career in the Pacific Coast League.
Yeah, and he did come back in the 20s. Pitched successfully. Never the pitcher he was early in his career.
And Carl Mays.
There were a lot of good pitchers.
Carl Mays.
Yeah, Carl Mays was an excellent.
He was the one that the story with the Red Sox and Yankees almost jumped to the National League with the White Sox because when the Red Sox sold the Mays to the Yankees, he was under suspension for walking off the mound during a game. He said, this is 1919, and he said, I can't play with these guys anymore. He walked off the mound and was suspended. And Johnson had a rule that you couldn't deal suspended players, and the Red Sox sold Mays to the Yankees, and he voided the sale, and there was created a whole, big stink over that whole thing.
But he did end up giving in, and Mays.
Yeah, Frazee. I can't stand this. One time when we had the convention in Boston, they had some of Frazee's apologists. And somebody asked me, they did a presentation. I said, well, somebody asked me. I said, all I know is when he bought the team, they were world champions. When he got rid of the team, they were laughing stock in the American League. I don't have to know anything else.
Well, there was some kind of arrangement worked out between the Yankees and the Red Sox.
You see guys going from Mac to Frazee to Rupert. There's a number of them.
Exactly. Yeah. There were a lot. Yeah, and really solid players. Yeah. Joe Dugan, the third baseman, started with the A's. Homer Baker, of course, started with the A's. Yeah, May started with Boston.
Yeah, because
the only thing that saved Speaker from being a Yankee was Cleveland traded for him.
Yeah, because Clive Waterman, I don't know if you've seen him at the conventions, he had a book published on the, I think it was the 1918 Red Sox, and he was doing a talk at the bookstore here. This is a whole bunch of years ago. And I'm sitting in the audience, and he asked me how many of the Red Sox wound up, 1918 Red Sox wound up in the 1923 Yankees. So I recited the list, and people were staring at me like, what?
Yeah, it was quite a list, too.
Yeah, it was. Sam Jones, Everett Scott. It was everybody. Harry Hooper wound up on the White Sox. But almost every one of the Red Sox who was still useful at that point wound up on the Yankees.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't think we can go wrong with Johnson in the American League and Alexander in the National League.
No, they would be my choices for, and at least a cut and a half or so above everybody else. But there were a lot of good pitchers, and some of them started to come toward the end of the decade. Stan Kowaleski emerged. There were, a couple. Wilbur Cooper, who I think is a very underrated pitcher. He hasn't pitched since 1920. The Pirates since 1924, and he's still their all-time win leader. Yeah, I know. No, and he wasn't pitching on pennant-winning teams either. No, because basically when they made a big trade with the Cubs after 1924, and Cooper was sent there, and the stories I've read about that is that he was almost a perpetual holdout with Barney Dreyfus, and Dreyfus wanted to get rid of him because of that. Yeah, it makes sense. He couldn't stand the contract disputes all the time. Yeah. Yeah.
But he still has the record for most wins by a Pirate pitcher after not being there for 80 years. 90 years now. Yeah.
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 And Veal still holds a single season strikeout record.
Yeah. Well, he won the strikeout crown in 1964 because Koufax missed almost the entire last month.
Yeah.
So
other than that, I don't know. Has Pittsburgh had a strikeout leader since Veal?
Pirates? Nah,
Yeah.
they don't have anybody with. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so.
They have very few 20-game winners in the history.
No.
The last one was John Smiley in 1991. Drebeck in 90, Candelaria in 77, Vern Law in 60, Friend in 58, and Murray Dixon in 51.
Murray Dixon won 20 with the last place team.
No, they were seventh. Yeah, it was the next year he was 14 and 21 with the team that was 42 and 112.
Okay. Yeah.
I've been looking at them up now because the Orioles this year have a chance to finish 70 games under 500.
Oh boy.
Which has only been done 3 times since World War II. With the 52 Pirates, they did 154 games. The 62 Mets and the 2003 Tigers. That's it since World War II. And the 1916 A's with 36 and 117, which is 81 games under an 154 game schedule. You got to be pretty bad to pull that one off.
Yeah.
There's a book that came out a couple of years ago on that team called As Bad as It Gets, and it's a day-by-day thing on the book on the 1916 A's. And Billy Meyer, who, among other things, managed the Pirates in 1952 when they were 42 and 112, was a catcher on that A's team.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
So
they were bad. They were, once after 1914, they were bad for the rest.
Yeah.
Just
and
awful.
They had 2 pitchers.
It was shameful the team they put in the field because
they had
all kinds of connections in the minors.
Yeah.
All kinds of people willing to do favors for him. And
they had 2 pitchers on the 1916 team. Joe Bush, who eventually wound up on the Yankees, and Elmer Myers won, I think, 29 out of the 36 wins with those 2.
Yeah. Yeah, they did. They
had
did.
a pitcher named Johnny Neighbors that won 1 and 20.
Yeah, 1 and 20, and Schellenbach was on that team too, I think. Yeah, they were.
Sheehan, Tom Sheehan.
Tom Sheehan.
That's Schellenbach, yeah. And there's a story I heard about Neighbors that he was it was a very hot day playing Boston. And he was leading 1-0, and they made a couple errors by him in the 9th inning. He was tied up. They threw a wild pitch, and they asked him about it after the game. He says, "I knew if I stood out there for another 2 hours, these bums wouldn't get me a run."
Yeah, yeah. I'm still checking to see if that story's true. I tend to
because there's the National Commission. If it was Landis, he would have been banned in a minute. If the National Commission was still running things then,
yeah, and nobody went after Mac for fielding these rotten teams.
No,
deliberately fielding them. Just it's payback. Payback to who? I don't know, but I guess the Philadelphia fans for not supporting the team better.
Yeah, well, what about in the 30s, when both of them were horrible?
Yeah.
The Phillies and the A's will last every year. Yeah.
I know. Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Okay, now we get to manager.
Manager, that's well.
McGraw won 4 pennants, but he lost all 4 World Series.
And
11, 12, 13, and 17.
Pennants in series.
Yeah.
And,
with Carrigan, Mac, because he won 3 series. Carrigan. The White Sox had 2 different guys in 17 and 19. They had Vance Dolan and Pete Gleason.
Yeah, Gleason.
So to me, it's got to be either Mac or Carrigan. Or Pat Moran, who won 2 pennants.
Moran
with the 15
That
Phillies
ran
and
15 and 19.
19, yeah, with teams that were not exactly overwhelming.
Not wonderful. And,
yeah.
yeah, if Pat Moran died young, if he'd stuck around,
yeah,
and had a chance to manage another 10 or 12 years, I think, his name would be among the very good managers.
Yeah, and Wilbur Robertson also won 2 pennants, in 1916 and 1920 with the Dodgers, who were not overwhelming.
So it's tough to.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
you're the best man. I mean, I would tend to give it to Kerrigan, winning back-to-back World Series. Mac had, because his teams were good. I mean, his teams were good throughout, and McGraw had access to a lot. McGraw and Mac had access to players. The other.
Oh, yeah, I know that. Yeah.
Had pipelines, and they got the guys they really wanted usually. But I may have found that game. Well, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I think this has been a terrific session. I've enjoyed it very much.
Really enjoyed it. Yes.
Okay, and so we'll sign off. I want to thank you again. Your knowledge of this is encyclopedic, as usual. And
pleasure to be with you again.
Yeah, and even next week or the week after, we'll do the 1920s, which should be good for a very lively discussion.
It will be. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, and give my regards to Marilyn.
Thank you.
Okay. Take care, David. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
We are back. A's Baseball, past, present, future. I'm Ralph Tyko of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and it is a happy day for the host of this show, one of the hosts, Nancy Finley's host, not here. Patrick Tracy's a host on the disabled list. But Jerry Feitelberg is a host. He's here, and I have never heard him as enthused about any one baseball game as he has been this morning. So I wanted to put this on the air, and Jerry, what it is.
What a clinic the A's put on yesterday against the L.A. Angels. They were unbelievable. They scored. They scored in one inning. They scored 6 runs. Another inning they scored 7 runs. Another inning they scored 5 runs, and then in the 8th inning they scored 3 runs, and for a total of 21 runs. They had 22 hits. 22 hits, and until the 8th inning. On the first 18 runs they scored, there was only 1 home run. That was Piscotty's home run. They had 2 home runs in the 8th inning, but the Angels had their catcher, Francisco Arcia, doing the pitching, and Nick Martini, who hadn't hit a home run all year, hit his first major league home run in the bottom of the 8th on a 58-mile-an-hour fastball. He hit a 2-run homer. And that was followed by.
And now I saw that. I got into that game late, and he looked like a batting practice pitcher up there. He
exactly.
was just.
But
they had no one left in the bullpen, and I'm just thinking, if they lose 3-2 today, it will change your smile into a frown.
Well, it's playing Minnesota today. But I was going to make the point that Arcia made Major League history yesterday with his performance. He was the first position catcher to pitch in a game, to catch in the game, and then hit a home run in the game. He hit a home run in the 9th inning. First position player as a catcher to pitch, catch, and homer in a game in the Major League history. How is that?
Wow. I will say this, Elias Sports Bureau, who's feeding you your stats, does a hell of a job. I think they go through the A's, and you're up in the press box. What's the feeling in the press box these days, grizzled reporters, former players, Fosse and the like, are they getting excited at this point?
Oh yeah, they're really excited about this club. The A's have won 92 games, and they've got 9 games left against Minnesota, Seattle, and the Angels again. And of course, the Angels pitching is they've been decimated by injuries, and Mike Scioscia, who's reported to be retiring, with quotation marks around the retiring at the end of the season.
Right. I don't think he's anxious to walk the plank.
No, he'd like to stay. But the feeling in the press box about Scioscia is that if he walks the plank, he'll get a job very easily after the season when they start firing the managers. He'll find a spot. He won't be unemployed for long. He doesn't have to worry about that. But the A's have just amazed all of baseball. If the A's have to go to New York to play the Yankees in the one-game playoff, the choice between the pitchers is either going to be Mike Fiers or Edwin Jackson, one or the other. They're not going to start Trevor Cahill, who has an ERA of over 7 on the road. And they're not going to start Brett Anderson, and they're certainly not going to do a bullpen game in the most important game for them of the season, which would be the one-game playoff. Of course, if they win that, then they just have a short trip up to Boston to play the first 2 games of the division series against the Red Sox. If they should somehow have the playoff game here at Oakland, and the Red Sox helped the A's last night by beating the Yankees, so the A's are
they both won in a game.
1.5 games. The Yankees have 1 more game to play than the A's. So it could go down to the last day of the season. And I don't know if they have a tiebreaker for the teams. They played each other.
I think the Yankees have won the tiebreaker. If I'm not
okay, so
it comes down to that. That's like them having a game in hand.
Yeah. So the A's have to finish the game ahead of the Yankees to host the game. And then if they were to win it, then they'd have to travel cross country to play the Red Sox. So, and as you know, they handled the Red Sox during the season. They took 4 out of 6 from the Red Sox. So the A's are becoming the team that no one wants to play because they've got the best record in baseball since June 16th. They're 58 and 25, 33 games over 500. Right now they're 30. For the season, they're 31 games over 500. I think they're 92 and 61.
How long can they go to the well with Jackson? He has been unbelievably fantastic. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But even Billy Beane said the only reason they signed him was initially to a AAA contract because they were being eaten up by injuries. The first wave of pitching injuries, which caught Graveman, among others. And he's been a miracle man. But if Beane doesn't know where it really came from, how can we be expected to put our hopes on him? And that's the big question mark.
You have to remember that the pitchers aren't going to go the full 9 innings. Edwin Jackson will give them 5 or 6 solid innings.
True, they've got that terrific bullpen.
Yeah, he ran into a little trouble in the first inning and worked out of it. And when he left in the 6th inning, he went 5 1/3 innings, I think, or 5 2/3. I don't remember. He left in the 6th inning. He had only given up 1 run, and that was the home run to Mike Trout. So that's not a crime. Mike Trout hits lots of home runs.
Oh,
but he only gave up,
Mike Trout
hit
a home run, though. He creamed that ball. I don't think there have been many hit that far in the Oakland Coliseum. That was.
There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. That was his 36th of the year. Tremendous athlete. tremendous.
Okay.
May I interrupt?
What was the attendance last night?
17,000.
Yeah.
17,000, and it looks smaller than that. When I got there,
you'd have liked to see 25 for that game.
When I got there, the parking lot looked full, and I thought, sure, we're going to have a big crowd, but 17,000 was it. But the fans that were there were very enthusiastic. They love their A's, and
absolutely,
that's a hardcore
no question about that.
Hardcore group. Yeah, and what was interesting in the game, the A's were trailing 1-0, and I forgot. A Shoemaker was pitching. He only went two and 2/3 innings yesterday, and they brought in Jim Johnson to pitch. Johnson was a reliever of the Orioles, and he had 100 saves over a 2-year period when the A's signed. He came here, and he couldn't get anybody out, and he's been bouncing around for the last 3-4 seasons. So they brought Johnson in to pitch, and he got the first 2 outs in the inning, and then the shortstop made a throwing error, and the A's went to town after that. I think they had 7 straight hits, and they put 7 runs on the board in that inning. And Johnson gave up 6 runs. None of them were earned. All 6 of the runs that they scored against him were unearned. How do you like that? Isn't that something?
Oh.
So
hey,
you never know.
Great game. Let me ask you a few questions. Did it hit you when earlier this week the A's basically have the Las Vegas franchise as their AAA? They've gone from Nashville to Las Vegas. I thought for a number of reasons it's interesting. First, from the standpoint of being able to call a player up, have him there that day, watch him rehab, that type of thing. It's terrific. The Mets were on the East Coast. They had Las Vegas last year. They're up in Syracuse coming up next year. I think those moves for the Mets and Vegas make a lot of sense. But it coincides with a conversation I had with a fellow named Rick Cordy, who is on a committee in Charlotte to obtain a Major League Baseball team, either by expansion or by one of 2 teams, Tampa or Oakland, not having their ballparks, which are iffy, let's just say. Until the shovel is in the ground, it's iffy. And Vegas has always been rumored as a possibility, and certainly the Raiders proved that one could leave Oakland and find a place. So did that, raise a red flag in your thinking in any way, or do you think this stadium deal is so set that all it's waiting is an announcement? Are they going to have it at the site of the Coliseum, present site, or is it going to be on the waterfront? And other than that, no problem. Do you think there might be a problem?
You brought up an interesting question, and the answer to the question is, will it be a problem? I don't know. There's a lot of speculation going on. As you know, a few years ago, the A's were affiliated with Sacramento, and they played. The River Cats were terrific for the A's, but they wanted to hang their hat with the Giants, which was okay. And the A's went to Nashville. Now, Nashville is 2,000 miles away, and it's a long flight for the players. Wherever, if the A's are on the West Coast or the East Coast, and someone has to be brought up, they have to fly all night to get wherever the A's are. And of course, being close to Las Vegas is an hour and 10-minute flight, And from that point of view, it's much more practical for them to have a team close by. I thought that they were going to perhaps work out an agreement with the Fresno team. The Fresno was under I think they were affiliated with the Astros.
Houston. Yeah.
With Houston, yeah. And so now Houston is going to Round Rock, which was affiliated with the Rangers. The Rangers are going to Nashville. So that opened up Las Vegas for the A's. And
who's going to Fresno, just out of curiosity?
I think the Rockies, maybe.
Oh, okay.
I think yeah. I think that what appealed to the A's in Las Vegas is that they have a new ballpark in Las Vegas for the team, or maybe domed or whatever. But I don't think it will hold enough people. It's a minor league facility. So yes, it's nice to.
No, but they could build what with architecture being the way it is, you could put another deck on there.
Sure.
And it's in Las Vegas, not in California. So it would take 3 hours and 75 minutes to do it, as opposed to California, where building would be like 6 years.
Oh yeah.
So it may appeal. We've yet to hear from the owner. All the time you and I have been doing the show, all the time I've been doing the show before you, the owner of the A's has never spoken a word.
Yeah, well, when I've been with the A's a long time. I've been associated with them for 25 years now, and I never met the Haas family when I was there, but their presence was known. Mr. Haas, if Walter Haas would be at the ballpark and needed something, I'd get a call, and and everybody jumped when Mr. Haas was there because they knew he was very civic-minded. He loved his A's. And the only reason it left the control of the Haas family because of the tax implications after his death. So it went to Schottenhofmann. I never met them, but I did meet Lou Wolf several times. And Lou Wolf had presence. He was the managing. He only owned maybe 10% of the club. The bulk of the club was owned by John Fisher. And since 2005, I've never seen John Fisher at the game. I wouldn't know what he looks like. I have never heard him speak. No one ever sees him, and we have no idea what he wants. It's okay that he remains
anonymous, but does he want to keep the club in Oakland? Does he care?
I think so. I think so. But he's a businessman. He understands dollars. And maybe he's one of these guys that figures if he's going to get a better deal in Las Vegas, maybe he'll go to Las Vegas. It's not that far away. But right now, my feeling is, and again, after the fiasco with Laney College last year, I think that Dave Cavell, who's the president of the club, and Dave is doing a terrific job. He's trying to build the franchise back to what it should be. He had the other night last week. He had the legends of the game out here. The A's have their own Hall of Fame now. They had the first inductees, Eckersley, Raleigh Fingers, Ricky Henderson, Dave Stewart.
And Nancy's uncle, Charlie
Finley, was represented by Charlie's son, Paul.
He's a terrific marketer, and he's throwing a ribbon on it, but he did make a move on the first stadium proposal without having his ducks in line.
Right. And that's not going to happen again. The fact of the matter remains that you cannot put lipstick on a pig. And unfortunately, the Oakland Coliseum is neither a football stadium nor a baseball stadium. It's a hybrid, and it doesn't work for either one of them. And the Raiders, of course, got tired of hoping that they could sell out the stadium or get a new stadium here in Oakland, and they're taking the team to Las Vegas. And the A's want a new facility. They need a new facility. They want one.
Are the A's still negotiating with Alameda County and Oakland, or have they settled on one entity to deal with?
That's a good question. I don't know. They've been very, very quiet about what they're doing. I know that they wanted to buy, or they're trying to negotiate a price to buy the Coliseum property from the city and county of City of Oakland and the Alameda County. As you know, the county and the city own, I think, 50-50. And anytime there's an old saying, too many cooks spoil the broth. And here you get too many politicians spoiling the broth. They can't agree on doing the right thing for Oakland, or the county will, if it's not in the county's things, then they'll put a monkey wrench in it. So, the A's are probably throwing their hands up in frustration dealing with these two entities. I know that.
Oh, I can imagine, because you can't blame them for everything, given the track record of Alameda County / Oakland with other pro franchises. That's why I'm more that and this being the week that they really got control of Las Vegas from the standpoint of territorial rights, if you will.
Sure.
And I spoke to this very articulate man. Rick Cordy is his name. He made a terrific guest. He's in North Carolina. Those folks are going through hell. There was a posting on Facebook that I had the other day of an article that 6 years ago, North Carolina took away funding for climate change and fixing levees and what have you. They denied all this, and I think that's typical of Southern thinking. But these are human beings going through hell, and Cordy is he's a transplant from Los Angeles, and it's a nice lifestyle in the Carolinas for some folks.
Sure. Well, the football team, the Panthers have had success there. So, the football teams do well, but football is a totally different game. They only play 8 games during the year, 8 home games, and they usually sell out the stadium if they're any good. And the Panthers, they went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, and so they got a good, strong following. Baseball's a different.
But
totally
baseball
different
following too. They have their AAA Charlotte team has the best attendance of any minor league team over the last 5 years.
Okay,
so my point is they're on a short list with other cities, Las Vegas being one of them, Montreal being another one. There are cities that will jump in if Tampa and Oakland don't get it together.
Yeah, and Rob Manfred at the Major League level, Commissioner of Baseball, has said they'd like to have 32 teams. So that means there'll be 2 more expansion teams. So Montreal and Charlotte could be in the mix to get an expansion team. We don't know. Montreal did it once with the Expos, and the sad part about the Expos is they never had a great place to play in Montreal. And they became the Washington Nationals, and they've had great success, relatively good success in Washington. They haven't made it they've been made it to the playoffs, but they haven't made it to the World Series yet.
Yeah,
so,
they picked up some bad vibes with what they did to Dusty Baker.
Did they ever? And but that's baseball. You
I don't
just
even
never know.
mean replacing him. I mean how they replace him.
Yeah.
They leave him hanging. They leave him in a hotel room. They don't call him. It's the inhumanity of big business. And make no mistake that baseball is big business.
Is it ever?
Yeah.
Is it ever? It's a multi-billion-dollar business. And I think it used to be many years ago, when we were kids, Ralph, if a team drew 1 million people, 1 million folks during the course of a season, they had a successful year. Now, if you draw 1 million, you're not going to make your expenses. The goal is 2 million or 2.5 million in sub clubs like the Giants and the Dodgers and the Yankees, Red Sox, Cubs. They'll put in between over 3. I mean, the Red Sox are close to 3 million in that little stadium that they have.
And you have to take into consideration TV money and clothing and caps and all that stuff that goes with it, marketing, apparel, which is
the difference between baseball and football. Football shares the revenue. They share the money among the 32 teams for the TV, and they control it all. In baseball, the Yankees own their own network. The Red Sox own NESN, New England Sports Network. Yankees own the YES network, and they did their own contracts, and they had the money. Baseball doesn't do the TV contracts. Here in the Bay Area, you have NBC Sports doing most of the Giants and the A's games, but the A's revenue is not as great from the TV market as the Giants for whatever reason. Their viewership probably is not as good as the Giants in the Bay Area, and the radio network is smaller than the Giants radio network. So their revenues, they don't own it. They get the money from NBC Sports. Whereas with the Red Sox own it, they got all the advertising money. The Yankees got it. They control it. And those networks probably were bigger. And then they also have the systems like DirecTV, Dish Network. They have the MLB packages where viewers or subscribers can purchase the entire baseball package. You can watch any game in any market at any time. And they have it for your iPad, your cell phone, and all that. So the games are all over the place. However, you do have anomalies like in Los Angeles, where some of the cable providers won't pay the exorbitant fees, and most of the Dodger games are not seen in L.A., which is unthinkable.
Vince Scully last year, he wasn't seen in the market for the most part.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Baseball will cut its own nose off to spite its face. And pretty soon, it's all going to come tumbling down.
Well, the thing is, the Giants can afford a payroll of $175 million because they're putting panties in the seats. The A's payroll is around $70 million, and they can't afford, if they want to get the premium players and compete with the big boys, they can't pay a player $15, $18, $20 million a year. That's why they let them walk. They can't do it. For example, I think they're paying. We discussed this earlier when they signed Jonathan Lucroy. He was a big fine for them. Early before the season started, they were smart enough to sign him, but I think they signed him for $6 million. Well, that's a lot of money, but not for a baseball player. And so Jonathan's going to be a free agent at the end of the season. It would really be in the A's best interest to work out a contract deal with him to extend him for 2 or 3 years, 3-year deal. He may not be making $18 or $20 million a year. Maybe he's in the $12 million range, but they have to bite the bullet if they want to keep the team going and be successful. They got to pay the players. The young players that they have control of are guys like Chapman, Olsen. They might want to get contracts extensions now for these guys and pay them $2 or $3 million a year until
you might want to lock up Piscani in some way and
exactly.
find a way of getting Laureano locked up.
Well, Laureano's under team control. He'll be on they got probably 5 more years on Laureano. But Piscani, what a season that young man's having. He's 27 years old. He hit his 26th home run of the year, and he has a career high 85 RBIs. How's that?
And he's got the undying affection of A's fans.
Oh yeah,
because he's from this area, and
from Pleasant.
tragic thing with his mom passing away. So
yeah, He's from the area. He went to Stanford. Smart guy. Got to be smart to go to Stanford.
Right.
I know they're smart because
or Noah Judge.
Yeah, Noah Judge, right? I know they let smart people in because they let me do the football games occasionally. Does that count going to Stanford?
Well, I would say it's Sanford's gain. They're the ones gaining.
Yeah, so I think the A's have got young players. This year they've got 5 guys in their lineup with over 20 home runs. They've got guys who are role players like Pinder and Canna who've got pop in their bat. They've got a solid catcher. Their backup catcher is adequate in Fegley. So they're a good, solid team, and they've surprised everybody. Their outfield now is terrific with Martini in left, and he platoons sometimes when Canna or Pinder will play when there's a lefty pitching. But
they're so deep. They've got Joyce out there as well.
Yeah.
And Fowler is still in the mix on some level.
Right.
You're going to have to make decisions on these outfielders at the end of the year. I think what they would be well served to sign a Manny Machado or someone.
I don't know if they can afford Machado, but we'll see. But the outfield. They started the season. They used Boog Powell, but he got hurt. They had Smolinski, who's never amounted to much in baseball. They had Marcana playing in center field. They had Fowler in center field, and then they had Laura.
Marcana's a pretty good ball player.
Yes, he is. And then they had Laureano come along, and he made a throw yesterday from center field. Right on the guy was going to tag up at second. He put it right in Chapman's mitt, right on the line, about 70 yards away.
Well, and Chapman is an acrobat at third. As long as he's got the first baseman, Matt Olson, who is Matt Olson's as good as anybody in baseball. Anybody I ever saw, except maybe Vic Power. Defensively.
Yeah, these guys are good. Yeah, and this is what has been the hallmark of this club. They play good defense. A couple of years ago, when Semien came up and he had 35 or 36 errors his first year playing shortstop, everyone was going, "Oh my God, they hit it to Semien. Where's he going to throw it?" Then our good friend Ron Washington, who had been the manager of the Texas Rangers and he went to the World Series twice with the Rangers, came on board again as the third base coach. Well, Mike Gallego was the coach, and but Wash came on board, and then they let Gallego go, and Wash took over. But I saw Wash working with Semien, and he had him work. He had him, that guy. He did the drills that you wouldn't believe to improve his agility, to do his footwork, to get everything right. And you have to remember, Semien was not a shortstop when he came on. He was a second baseman. He was a second baseman with the White Sox when he came over in the trade. And they moved him over. They knew he was athletic enough to do it. And the first couple of years, everyone was shaking their heads and saying, "Why do we get this guy? He's terrible." And now he's developed into a good, solid shortstop. He really does a nice job.
Absolutely. And I was one of those that was really on him at the beginning of the year. And he's come along just fine. And to have a guy like Pinder on the bench, Pinder is very, very versatile, very good at different positions. And they're excellent.
He plays anywhere in the infield, and he's played all the outfield. I think he's played all the outfield positions. He's played center, left, right. He can do it all. And he's in the Ben Zobrist mold. Good, solid player.
Well, let's hope the pitching stays. They're keeping it together with chewing gum and baling wire. Let's hope they can continue to do that.
Yeah. Let's comment about Brett Anderson's performance the other night. He went. I thought it was his best game of the year. He gave up 3 hits. And I don't think it was no runs. It was a shutout. They won 10-0. And
we've talked about this before. If it weren't for injuries, guys like Cahill and Anderson would have still been here from the first time they were here. They were terrific early on. And as long as they stay healthy, you got a shot at it. And again, hats off to Jackson. Hats off to that terrific closer, Tiernan.
Trying
Is he something else?
I just wanted to comment on Brett Anderson's performance. He doesn't have blazing speed. I don't think he throws the ball over 90 miles an hour. But he moved the ball around. He had his curveball working, his slider working. He hit his spots, and he pitched. He was not a thrower. He was a pitcher on Wednesday night when they won 10-0. And Melvin took him out. He only had thrown 82 pitches. He could have gone another inning, but I guess with the bullpen, and he didn't use. He used three guys that usually don't pitch. I think he used J.B. Wendelken and Aaron Brooks and someone else that doesn't pitch very often. Maybe it was Sean Kelly. I just don't remember. But those guys kept the Angels off the board. So they got performances from those guys, too.
Terrific all around. Hey, let me ask you about the media a little bit. Is Dallas Braden taking over for Ray Fosse? Is that the idea? They phasing him out?
I don't know. I know Ray loves doing it. I talked to Rick. We chatted a couple times during the season, but I didn't bring that up. We just talked baseball, and Ray has such great insights in the game. He absolutely
does. He's got the experience and what have you. Yeah. There's got to be a way that Braden stays with them. He is really good. He's like a young gal.
Well, Braden knows the pitching side of it. Fosse,
he's got the personality too.
Oh, does he ever? And but Fosse's in his 70s, and I think he's in about 70, 72, somewhere in there. But he knows the whole game because he was the catcher, he was the field general. He understands.
No question about his knowledge. I'm just talking from the standpoint of keeping the interest of some young folks. That's all.
Oh yeah, so again, they could use Ray as the third man in the radio booth, or they could split some of the time. I don't know what they plan on doing. No one has said anything. No one discussed it. I know that I've enjoyed Braden a lot better than Scott Hatterberg or Mark Mulder, who they've had in for 20 games for the last couple of seasons.
Or Ray Fosse, for that matter.
Well, Braden was on ESPN, and he was doing fine doing the games there, and now he came home. He's from Stockton, and he's just a genuine character.
Right, and fun. That's part of it.
Fun.
He seems like he's having fun.
He does. He does.
Makes a big difference.
Yeah.
You're the same way, Jerry. Thank you for being here.
Well, I enjoy doing these shows with you. It's a lot of fun.
And it is my privilege. Let's put it that way.
Oh no, what you got going, Ralph, is terrific. And you talk with people all over the country, and you get different points of view. And
hey, the best thing I have going is Tally Olson.
There you go.
Don't ever forget that. That's
you got that right.
I got that right. And let's leave it at that. Thanks for the compliments, my friend. And
you got it.
We'll be back same time, same bat station. As Al Blumkin
Talk to you next week.
All right.
Talk to you next week. Okay, take care.
This has been a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.